Hello.
Hello?
Looks, Brandy, it looks like it's you and me so far. Oh, wait a second. Maybe we have one of the,
Hi.
Nicole. Nicole
Hi, how are you?
has been writing me, huh?
Yes, quite a
Oh,
bit, right? I'm sorry.
gosh. Thank you so much. Nicole is like, she's our favorite around here. Because she
Really? I was like, they probably think I'm so annoying.
not,
That was the favorite.
no, see, Nicole has an eagle eye. And she has found a couple of like little typos and things. And I am so grateful to Nicole for that because
Oh,
she makes the experience better for everybody.
oh,
Oh, I
thank
dropped the
you.
ball there.
Yeah.
I saw one or two, but I didn't say anything. My apologies.
Well, that's all right. It's all right. I mean, I understand most people don't really take the trouble that Nicole did to really write them down and document them and communicate them. And that was a lot of work. So that, that's why I'm saying thank you.
My pleasure. That is the sweetest dog behind you.
Oh, oh, you mean the one on the wall?
Mhm.
I thought maybe you meant this one.
Hi, honey. Hi, darling.
That's Boney Maroney.
That we've seen in the videos. Hey, Bonnie Maroney.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Well, she doesn't even wake up because she's so used to me teaching that she doesn't care anymore. She doesn't even
Okay.
bother to wake up.
Well, I'm just hoping none of my cats jump in front of me right now because the minute I sit down and try to do something, they're on top of me looking for love.
Aw.
Oh, that is so. So how many kitty cats do you have?
Two of them.
Uh-huh.
There's Sammy, the older one. He's a ginger cat, and there's Keystone, the young model, and he's an asshole. But he's a wonderful one. We love them both.
Uh-huh.
I
That's
have
great.
mine too. My oldest one is put in the youngest one is Oreo.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. Two cats. Hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's,
So, very cool.
my dog grew up with cats. And so
Okay.
when I first got her, she acted like a cat. She would arch her back and she would hiss like
Really?
a cat. Yeah, it was weird. But she grew out of it. She grew into being a dog.
Yeah,
So talk to me. What are we doing today? I mean, I know we're doing a review, but the point is that I try to make this very student centered. In other words, I don't want to give you a lecture about stuff you're not interested in. Since so far there's only three of us, we can do what we want.
I'm down with that. Is there pizza?
I wish.
Well, do you want to start with the Q&A first?
Why not?
Okay, I wrote down about, hold on for a second. I'm gonna, don't go anywhere. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna give like three questions. One of them is, okay, I'm coming back. One of them is in one of the things that says about meeting outside of the office.
Yeah.
And the choice is in a coffee shop. I talk with my hands, but you don't have to see that. The choice is a coffee shop or a public place, which to me are essentially the same thing. But thank you, Henny. But to me, if I answer the wrong question because I think they're the same, I'm going to get a lesser score on the test. What do you recommend?
Okay. First and foremost, I'm going to tell you some inside information. There are no questions on the state test about safety.
Okay.
And the reason why is because Department of State does not like to change the test. It's expensive to change a test. It's a pain to change the test. And they kind of stuck this safety chapter in sort of as an afterthought. So they did not put any safety questions on the state test. They require the schools to have a safety question.
I see.
Okay. So where did you get this question from? Did you get it from the course itself or did you get it from one of the practice tests?
It was one of the practice tests.
Okay. And what were the choices?
Oh, I don't know. There were four choices, of course, but one was, I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay, well, let's make up some choices. Okay. Now you told me two of them. One is a coffee shop. The second is a public place.
Correct.
The third is, let's say, vacant apartment. Vacant apartment. And the fourth is dark, scary place.
I think so.
Okay,
It wasn't
we
that
know
obvious.
that C and D are wrong,
Right.
right? We're not gonna meet them in a vacant apartment. We're not gonna meet them in a dark, scary place. Okay, but a coffee shop or a public place, you know, I would agree with you. It sounds to me like both of those are right answers.
Yeah.
What did the answer key say?
Coffee shop.
Hang on, because let me look at it for a second.
Mhm.
What I'm doing is I'm checking my notes to see if I can find the actual question that you are talking about. All right, so bear with me for a second, because then I could find whether they make any distinction about the coffee shop or the public place. Because it would seem to me that if there are two right answers, that would be a poorly written question. And if there are two right answers, then I think you're joining Nicole in the Proofreaders Hall of Fame. Yeah, I don't see the question here. So I'm going to tell the team to research it for me. And, oh, here's Elliot. Elliot says, in the property you've arranged to show, in a coffee shop, in the brokerage, even though it's closed, or in public on the street. Oh, okay. There's the distinction. Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Elliot.
So yeah, so the coffee shop is going to be better because in the coffee shop, you've been communicating with a waiter or waitress. Maybe you've been communicating with the person you paid the bill to. It's an enclosed environment. People can see you. You know, it's lit up. There are telephones and everything. On a public street, people are passing by. They're not paying attention to you. You haven't spoken to anyone. There's no contact, no nothing. So if I were threatened, let's say, and I started screaming, I would get a lot more help if I were screaming inside of a coffee shop than if I were screaming in the middle of the street.
Makes sense.
On a New York City street, nobody's paying you any attention at all.
So true. In New York City street,
Terrible.
nobody's gonna pay attention. Yeah. So thank you for that, Elliot. Very good. Okay, so yeah, the answer would be a coffee shop. What else have you got, Randy? What were your other questions?
Okay, hold on a second. On the math question, on the math questions, do we have to give just an answer to the equation, or do we have to give the answer to the variety of how you get to the answer if there's something missing?
No, on both the school test and the state test, you throw away your notes.
Okay,
Okay, what, like if you go to the state test and you take it in person, they give you a piece of scrap paper. And at the end of the test, they throw away your scrap paper. They don't care about your work.
mm-hmm. Okay, and then I have like 7 or 8 questions. I'll give you one
Crazy.
more. This is just this is a stupid, curious question, but why can't spreadsheets be used
For what?
for the calculations? I'm a spreadsheet person. I can make like 13 pages of spreadsheets, but I guess I should just rest on, using a calculator and that's it.
Are you referring to the school test and you're saying that like you like to use an Excel sheet to do your calculations?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. It's a state rule. And the idea is that, see, you are supposed to use a calculator like from the dollar store. By the way, this bling calculator isn't a great. My very first broker gave this to me as a gift like 4 years ago. My very first broker, I still have it. Anyway, this is an El Cheapo calculator. I mean, it's cute and everything, but it cannot store data. It cannot store equations. Excel sheets can store equations. Department of State wants your equations here.
Right, I understand.
So yeah, so you're not allowed to use any devices or tools that can store equations. Or like, for example, like pretend you get an acres question. Department of State wants you to remember how many square feet in an acre. Whereas if you have an Excel sheet, you could program that into the Excel sheet.
Right, I understand. Okay, and I'll give one more and then I'll let other people speak.
Okay,
The practice tests. Is there a limit to those? Because I use those constantly to just refresh my memory about what I've done. And the more I take the practice test, the better I get. Is there a
okay.
limit?
Where are you getting the practice test from?
From the dashboard, where it says practice tests. And, you can do anywhere from 1 to the 19th one. And I keep going back to them to make sure that I'm doing correctly.
Okay, well, you are definitely on the right track. Are you telling me, Randy, that, okay, and RELNY says you can keep taking and retaking them. Are you telling me that you've gotten to the point now where you've got the practice test memorized and you can't keep doing them over and over?
Oh, no. Oh, no, not memorize. I look at the answers, I go, okay, then I have to rethink and think and think and go, okay, that's how I got there. And that helps me remember.
That sounds like a fantastic process to me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
if you feel that you need more study material, see, I'm going to tell you the truth. I recommend the RELNY tests that we have, but like sometimes you go online and you find practice tests, and I do not recommend those.
now I'm sticking completely directly with
Okay.
RELNY only.
Okay, then sounds to me like you're doing great.
And I make copious notes when I'm going through the lecture, and your lovely voice booms right through there. And I take copious notes. It's amazing. And like on the side note, when I was researching classes, I was speaking to a broker, and after a couple of emails between me and this broker, she said, "You ask way too many questions." And I said, because I want to know what the answers are, not what they aren't. But I've met people like that before, and I know how they are. So I always keep my process the way I do it, and it tends to work.
Okay. All right, very good. Now, Shanine says that she would like to go over PITI, which is a beautiful idea. So let me see if I can only see a couple of people at a time. So, all right, there's Shanine. I see her here. Now, Shanine, I'd like to ask you, well, let me throw it out to everybody. Department of State does not like abbreviations, but they love the abbreviation PITI. Does anybody remember what PITI stands for?
Yes.
Principal.
All right, talk to me. What is it?
Principal, interest, tax, and insurance.
Now, those are your housing costs.
I was about to say correct, but you know that.
Now, principal and interest are the bank's money. So every month you're going to pay your debt service. And we know that debt service is principal and interest. And we're going to pay every month debt service to the bank. That's their money. Principal is the amount of the mortgage loan. So you're paying back the loan. And interest is the cost of borrowing, because nobody's going to lend you money for free. So interest is the cost of borrowing. So the principal and interest are the bank's money. But what most homeowners do is they also pay to the bank real estate tax and insurance. Now, real estate tax, that's New York City's money, right?
Right.
Well, have anybody here who's not from New York City?
I'm
No.
not from, I'm on Long Island. I lived in New York City.
So if you're in Long Island, it's Nassau County's money,
Stop
right?
it.
All right,
Suffolk.
it's Suffolk County's money, okay? So the tax is the local government's money. The insurance is the money of whoever your insurance company is. If you like Geico, or you like Limu Emu, or Allstate, or what is it, Jacob State Farm, whichever insurance company you choose, that's their money. So why in the world do you pay tax, which is the city's money, to your bank, and insurance, which is the insurance company's money, to your bank? The reason why is they call it a budget mortgage. So I'm going to type it here in the notes for everybody. So a budget mortgage is when the borrower pays debt service to bank, as well as property tax and insurance. The bank then pays the municipality for the tax and the insurance company for the insurance. Now, there's a couple of reasons why this would be. One reason is that for a lot of homeowners, it's much easier to just have one monthly payment that's always the same, rather than like property tax. In some municipalities, it's quarterly. In some municipalities, it's semi-annual. And so people get mixed up. When am I supposed to pay it and how much is it? And this way, it's very easy because you just write a check for the same amount every month. And then your tax and insurance are taken care of for you by the bank. So that would be the incentive for the homeowner. The incentive for the bank, does anybody know why the bank likes the budget mortgage?
No.
Okay, well, it's not on the test. It's not on the test, but I'm going to tell you just for your interest. Because the bank wants to be sure that the insurance is getting paid. Because what if the place burns down and the homeowner hasn't been paying their insurance? The bank is going to be screwed, right?
All right.
Or what if the homeowner hasn't been paying their local property tax? If the bank forecloses, the property tax gets paid before the bank's mortgage gets paid, because
Is
the
that right?
property tax lien. And here's a question that is always on the test. Here's a question always on the test. In foreclosure, which lien is paid first? Anybody know the answer?
I don't actually.
Property tax.
Real property tax. Real property tax. Now, I want to be sure that everybody is with me. Does everybody have the chat turned on? Because what I like to do for you is I take notes and I type notes and questions into the chat. And then at the end of the class, you can copy the chat and then you'll have all the notes written down for you from the class. Because it's kind of silly. There's like maybe 10 of us here, and it's kind of silly for 10 people to all be sitting here taking notes. Why not have one person taking notes, meaning me, like I'll be the class secretary, and then you'll have the notes, the complete notes at the end of the class.
Do we need to know then what the line of, I don't know how to phrase this, but if, who's the next in line? If the property tax is next in line, who then sequentially are next in line?
It's not on the test, but I'll tell you the answer.
Okay.
The answer is that we have a saying in the real estate industry, which is first made, first paid. So after the real property tax, generally speaking, the liens are going to fall into chronological order.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now Sherry asked, how do you copy the chat? What I do is I just hold down my my enter key and scroll up so that I highlight the whole chat. And then I just copy with Control C and then paste it into a document. You can try it now if you want to, like do a test run and try it now and see if you can copy it into a document.
I see mine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? If nobody has any questions, believe me, I have plenty to cover. All right. But any more questions for me?
I always have questions. Let me see. Boo, 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 boo.
I have one before, Randy, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Okay. Just so that I can hear it again, the difference, the informed consent,
Mhm.
can you go over that? Like, when would that be used again, informed consent?
Okay. Well, informed consent, let me type it into the chat, okay? So
Okay.
informed consent means someone knows and agrees. Informed means they know and consent means they agree. There are actually quite a few situations in which informed consent could be used. Probably the most common. So there are several situations in which informed consent could be necessary. The most common one is dual agency.
Mhm.
And there's a question about that on your test. And the question is, when is dual agency legal? And the answer is with written, informed consent by both parties. That is always on the test. Now, when I say the test, I'm trying to prepare everybody for both the school test and the state test.
Mhm.
And when RELNY designed the school tests, we tried to make the school test quite similar to the state test because obviously Department of State is creating a model. Their test is a model of what they consider important enough to question you about.
Mhm.
So who are we to argue with Department of State? If they consider that these are the important topics, we're going to ask you about similar topics. So this
Okay.
question that Nicole just asked about informed consent, I promise you, you'll see it on the school test, you'll see it on the state test. Now, another place, Nicole, where you would see informed consent would be in cases where you're being paid by both sides. So that would be another question, okay? When is it legal for a broker to be paid by both client and customer? Oh, that's kitty cat.
Is that Oreo?
Oreo, yep.
How old is Oreo?
Oreo is 10 months.
She is Oreo a boy or girl?
A girl and a cookie girl.
And she looks like a baby. She's adorable.
Thank you. She's a handful. I think she's part monkey.
Okay, I'm going to type this. When is it legal for a broker to be paid by both client and customer in the same deal? And the answer is with informed consent by the client. Now, that's actually interesting because the answer used to be with informed consent by both the client and the customer, but they changed the law. New York state law changed recently. And so it's with informed consent, you only need the consent of the client. So let me give you like a real life example, okay? Let's pretend that I am representing a tenant. So the tenant is my client. And I go and I show them an apartment. Now the landlord has a policy that he pays commission to any broker who brings a tenant. That's fairly common for landlords to do. It's called an OP. An OP stands for owner pays. And landlords do it because they want to attract brokers to their building. All right, so I'm a broker. Can I be paid by both the landlord and the tenant in the same deal? Sure. But I need the permission of my client, the tenant. I need their informed consent.
Does that mean the landlord's a customer?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna look for that in your notes because I want to make sure I
Deed
write it down.
restriction, restrictive covenant, and CCRs. Oh, I love it. Those are great questions. Okay. A deed restriction. A deed restriction is a limitation on the property which is written in the deed. A deed restriction is a limitation on the property which is written in the deed. Restrictive covenants, well, we know that a covenant is a written promise. So a restrictive covenant is a limitation on the property which is not written in the deed, but in a separate document. Now, why would you write it in a separate document? Because maybe you have too many freaking rules. Like, for example, maybe you have a condo and you have a whole bunch of restrictions and you say, well, no dogs over 25 pounds, no music after 10 o'clock at night, no personal items in the hallway, no holiday decorations on the doors, like all these little rules. Okay, I lived in a condo once and they had a rule about you had to have 1/4-inch cork under all your flooring, like all these stupid little rules. Oh, they had another one that like all your window treatments, like your curtains and your blinds and everything had to be white. Like stupid little rules like that. If you have a million little rules like that, you're not gonna put them in the deed.
Sounds like a
You're gonna
HOA.
put these restrictions in a separate document. And that would be a restrictive covenant. Now, usually those restrictive covenants, they're actually filed with the government. So like they're official documents and everything, they're filed with the government, they're just not written into the deed. Otherwise, the deed would be like ridiculously long and trivial and stuff like that.
So,
ahead.
question. So if I'm showing somebody, you know, well, either in a homeowners association or somewhere where it's more than just, this is my house, I get to make the rules. You know, it's like in a co-op or a condo or an homeowners association. Does the salesperson, when somebody's coming to look to purchase, have to give the potential buyer that information so they know what they're getting into?
Yes, but you're gonna get it anyway. Because think about it this way. Let's say that I'm a seller and you're a buyer, okay? And I'm selling my condo to you, okay? Well, when you become interested in the condo, your lawyer is going to say, well, I want to read some of the documents. I want to read the offering plan for the building.
Right.
I want to read the engineer's report. I want to read the most recent financial statement. I want to read the restrictive covenants. I want to read the bylaws. Okay, your lawyer is going to demand to read all these documents. So me, like I'm not a lawyer, I wouldn't be smart enough to know what documents to give you, but your lawyer knows what to ask for.
Yeah, and I've worked with attorneys like that. I worked as a paralegal in transactional law. And if I didn't do that, in this course, I'd be lost. So I came in, you know, with my feet already wet. So I, you know, and this is just a side note, and it's not important, but I have to stand back and go, okay, I don't want to tell people what to buy and what not to buy, but I want them to know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Shanine, I have a question for you. I've just typed into the chat the definitions of the deed restriction, the restrictive covenant, and the CCRs. And I've shown you the distinction of how they are different, but I imagine you have other questions about it. Like, do you have a follow-up question about deed restrictions and how they work and stuff, or how you get rid of them or something? You can unmute yourself and talk to me.
It's at the bottom of the corner.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom, there's that little icon of the microphone, and if it has a red line through it, you're muted. So you can just click on it and then talk. All right, well, if Shanine has something to say, she will definitely add it in a second. In my course, I told you a story about deed restrictions because I think that a story kind of a real life story kind of reinforces it. But I'm going to tell you a different story that I think will reinforce the difference between a deed restriction and a restrictive covenant and something like that. All right. Now, my grandfather owned a chemicals business in upstate New York. And in his factory, he used alcohol for some of the processes. And by the way, here, I'm going to even show you. This is one of his products. See, it says Bacorns at the top. That's one of my grandfather's products. So anyway, in the 1920s, alcohol was illegal. So if you were going to use it for industrial purposes, you would get like an industrial license. Well, the gangsters, the criminals, found out that my grandfather had an alcohol license. So they went to him and they said, we will give you as much money as you want. Just let us buy alcohol from you. And my grandfather said no. And the gangsters said, you know, that is so sad. You have the sweetest family and such cute kids.
Ouch.
Yeah, and my grandfather went, ugh. So my grandfather called his lawyer and said, what do I do? And the lawyer said, well, the first thing you do is put a deed restriction on every property you own, except the factory and the warehouse. And the deed restriction will say that alcohol will never be grown, stored, used, nothing on this premises. So my grandfather did that. Now, he put the deed restriction on every property he owned except the factory. And my grandfather died and forgot to remove the deed restrictions. So how do you remove the deed restrictions? One of the properties that my father inherited from my grandfather was a farm. And the farm wasn't a very good farm, but it was smack in the middle of New York State wine country. So how is my father going to sell it if he's got a farm in the middle of grape country and it can't be used for grapes? Now, my father, probably the best way to remove a deed restriction is to go to the local judge and say, Your Honor, look, this deed restriction doesn't make any sense. And it's whimsical, it's trivial. And the judge can always remove a deed restriction. Now, judges will use their discretion about removing a deed restriction, but they will especially remove a deed restriction if it has anything to do with any kind of violation of the law. For example, if there's a deed restriction that violates fair housing law, a judge will remove it immediately. If there's a deed restriction that violates Americans with Disabilities Act, judge will remove it immediately. In a case like this, if it were a deed restriction, the judge has to actually change the deed. And the judge will do it if you make a compelling enough case that it doesn't benefit anyone anymore, that it was an outdated thing that my grandfather did to follow the law from the 1920s. But like now, that law is irrelevant, and so on and so forth. So a judge can always remove a deed restriction. The deed restriction can also be removed by the person who placed it, but the person who placed it, like my grandfather, was deceased. Now, I have a question for you. The rule about the That's background noise, right? Is that background?
Katrina, can you mute yourself?
Don't worry, I can do it.
How you
can,
doing? Sorry.
Yeah, I can mute the participants. There we go. And if people want to talk to me, just unmute yourself. Okay, now I have a question for you. My grandfather's rule about no alcohol, it was in a deed restriction. So if he dies, the next person who owns the property can't have alcohol either, right? Unless the judge removes the deed restriction. What if it had been a restrictive covenant?
You got me by the sneakers.
Would if it had been a restrictive covenant, would the new owner still have to follow it?
Well, wouldn't that come after the contract and after the title report? With the
Well, the
exception.
title report is going to show the deed restriction. And your
Yeah.
lawyer's going to pick it up because your lawyer's going to read the deed.
And so that would, the person removing that would have to, so say I'm reading the title report and I see the exceptions and the normals and I come across that. And that's always been my thing with the title company is tell me how to remove this. So I kind of understand what you're saying, but that would be sort of after the fact, after you've gotten the contract signed and the contract and everything is being cleared out before closing comes.
Okay, now Nicole made an excellent point. Nicole made the point that the restrictive covenant is not in the deed, it's in a separate document. But the deed, remember how in the chapter about deeds, we talked about the essential elements of a deed. And in the deed, there's a place to make reference to the restrictive covenants. And so the restrictive covenants have to be followed just as if they were in the deed.
Okay.
But they can be removed by either of two things. They can be removed by a judge, or they can be removed by the maker, the person who made the restrictive covenant in the first place. So pretend the person who made the restrictive covenant in the first place was a condo board, and the condo board made a rule, no music after 10 o'clock at night. Now they want to change the restrictive covenant, no music after 9 o'clock at night. Even though it's filed with the county clerk, can the condo board change it? Sure, because they're the ones who put it in the first place. So they can change, they can take it back. They can remove it, they can change it, whatever. Okay, so everybody got the restrictive covenants and everything?
So in the case like with your granddad, it would have had, if it was a restrictive covenant, it would have had to go through the judge after he passed. Is that correct? After he passed, because he didn't change it before, it would have to go to the judge, right?
What actually happened, what ended up happening is my father knew that he could have gotten the restrictive covenant removed, but he didn't. He didn't want to go through it all. He just sold the place. So he sold the place to somebody who then they went to the judge and got the restrictive covenant removed, and they turned it into a winery.
Oh, nice.
And I assume that that buyer went to the attorney and the attorney went to the judge to have that removed.
Correct, Mundo.
Well, in your granddad's case, it was a deed restriction though, right? Not the restrictive.
In my granddad's case, you are correct, Nicole. In my
So, but if it had been, and he had passed, either the new owner or the new owner would have had to go to get go to the judge because he's gone. So it goes like through that same procedure. Okay.
Right. When my father inherited it, my father could have gone to the judge, but my father didn't want to bother, so he just sold it. And then the people who bought it, then they went to
to do it. Mm-hmm.
which probably was smart on their part because they got a cheaper price.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else have we got?
The implied contract. No, did I ask what? No, I didn't. Implied contract. When does that typically take place?
I am sorry to say that that happens very frequently.
Frequently?
Yes. And it usually happens, in my experience anyway, it usually happens with inexperienced salespeople who don't really think about what they're doing. And I don't want to sound like I'm being critical of anybody because I had that problem too when I first started. When I first started, like I worked in commercial, and when I first started, I would get so excited about a deal. I would, this is great. I'm going to sell this shopping center to this guy, and it's going to be this much, and it's and these are the tenants. And I would get so excited about the deal that I would forget to ask, who do I work for and who's going to pay me? And like, if you don't have a contract with somebody, it's kind of hard to get them to pay you. So I just got so wrapped up in the deal, and I was young and I was new to the industry. And so like, I didn't really think about it. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm disparaging anybody. It's a very common mistake that beginners make, and I was guilty of it myself. Now, I had a student in my continuing ed class the other day, and the student said to me, was telling me about a deal. And I said, who are you representing, the seller or the buyer? And she said, I don't know.
Oops.
And I said, who does your broker have a contract with? And she said, I don't know. I don't think my broker even has a contract. Now, the trouble with the implied contract is that it can be proven in court. But I mean, it's harder to prove an implied contract than a written contract, but it can be proven in court. The trouble is that it's very difficult to do business when there's no written clarity. Now, I got to tell you the truth. I'm a broker myself, as you know, and my business partner, when he and I have a business conversation, I write him an email afterwards and say, this is to confirm what we discussed in our conversation about the deal. And I don't do it because I don't trust the guy. Of course I trust him. What I don't trust is our memories. So I say, get everything in writing.
Yep.
Now, with regard to the implied contract, there are kind of two places that you're likely to see it in real estate. One is where somebody makes it clear, like a seller, for example, makes it clear that they want you to market their property, but they don't come right out and say it. Like, they don't come right out and say, I want you to sell my property, or they don't come right out and sign a contract. They do something like they give you the keys and say, yeah, show it to lots of people. That's an implied listing contract. It's not written. It's not spoken clearly. So it's implied. By giving you the keys, or by saying to you, well, you can show it every night of the week and all day Saturday and all day Sunday. It's an implied contract. So that's
And the key giving was the ratification?
Thank you. Yes. So that's the first place that you would probably see an implied contract, is in a listing. The second place where you see an implied contract has to do with leases. Now, does anybody remember the estate at sufferance?
I've never heard of that.
Yes, it's when somebody won't get out and they're supposed to. Sorry, that's why I put it. You're suffering through them being there.
Right. The landlord
stays
is
beyond.
suffering. Right. Right. Okay. So an estate at sufferance. Now, I had a student that this happened to, so I'm going to tell you the story. I had a student who bought a small building. It had about 6 apartments in it. And the reason that he bought the building is that he thought that the rental prices were cheap. And he said, well, like every year the leases are going to come due. And every time a lease comes due, I can raise the rent and I'll make a lot of money. So he bought this little small apartment building, and the first lease came due, and he knocked on the lady's door and he said, look, your lease is expiring in a couple of months, and I'm going to raise your rent from $1,800 a month to $1,900 a month. And she goes, no, you're not. And he says, oh, I'm terribly sorry. Are you leaving us? She goes, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. but I'm going to continue to pay $1,800 a month. And he goes, you can't do that. And she says, try me. And she slams the door in his face. Now, her lease expires. Let's say January 1st, her lease expires. She doesn't move out. She's there illegally. Now, what do you do with an illegal tenant? Okay, he could make her legal and sign a lease, but she's not going to sign a lease for $1,900. Or he could go to court and evict her. Evicting people is difficult and slow in New York City.
And I've tried doing it.
Is it difficult and slow?
It's difficult and slow and confusing. I was doing it during COVID.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Okay,
But-
so yeah.
No, it's a war story. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. So that's what this landlord decided to do. He decided to evict her. Now, it's a lengthy process. So while he was going through the court eviction, trying to get a court order, she was sending him a check every month for $1,800. If he cashes the check, it's an implied contract.
Right,
Right.
right,
And
So, yeah.
then he can't evict her because now she's legal.
right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now Shanique has a great question about kinds of mortgages. And she said, I heard that was on the test this year and types of deeds. I'm sure we won't have time to cover both questions, but if we can go over the blanket and the wraparound. Okay, great. Now, I just want to say one thing, which is on the test this year, Department of State almost never changes the test. Now, I think I might have mentioned why that is in the class, but let me go through it again. Department of State wrote the test 40 years ago, and the only time they ever really change it is if the law changes. And the reason why is that well, I have vast experience with Department of State, and I have kind of a love-hate relationship with them. And there are certain things I love about them, but what nobody likes about Department of State is that they have atrocious customer service. And the second thing people don't like about them is that their enforcement is not as strong and powerful as we might like. So people are always writing the state government and going, we want Department of State to have better customer service and better enforcement. Nobody ever writes the state and says, I'm outraged that Department of State hasn't been writing new questions for the salesperson real estate licensing exam. Nobody ever does that. So it's a really low priority for them. Writing test questions is expensive because they have to hire a consultant, like somebody like me. Okay, they have to hire somebody to write the questions. Then they have to have a team that reviews the questions, make sure the questions are fair, make sure that they align with the curriculum. Then they have to change all the test papers and all the test answers and all the computers in every test center in the freaking state. It's very expensive. And Department of State says, well, you know, like most of our real estate law is 2,000 years old. Why do we need to write new questions? So I know for a fact that they almost never change the test. You know how I know? Because I first got my license about 40 years ago. And I took the test 40 years ago. I took the test again for fun in 2018. It was the same test.
Wow.
And the students write me, like RELNY told me they did some calculations, and they figured out which schools I've taught for. I've taught for many different schools. They figured out which schools I taught for and how many students I had per class and how many years I taught. And they figured out I've had more than 100,000 students. So the students take my class, they go downtown, they take the test, they email me what the questions were. So
Wow.
I've been ho hum, oh, I've been getting the same questions in emails like for 20 years now. Okay, so I've answered that concern of Shanine. Now let's address Shanine's concern about the mortgages. I promise you, I'm glad that you centered on the blanket mortgage, because I promise you the blanket mortgage is on the state test. All right, and I can't remember I remember what the question is, but I can't remember what the answers were. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of make up some multiple choice for us. All right. What is a blanket mortgage? A loan for farms, a single loan covering several properties, a number of loans wrapped around one parcel of land, or a loan secured by FHA.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Nicole.
What
Is
did
she-
Nicole?
because
Nicole says B. She is absolutely right. It is a single loan covering several properties. Now, here is a question that I got to tell you the truth. The first time that I saw this question, I puzzled over it. And in retrospect, I don't know why I puzzled over it, but I did. So I'm going to give it to you now. Which of the following types of loan mortgages will be used to cover a number of lots in a subdivision? So what's the answer? I think everybody knows the answer, right?
Blanket?
Blanket.
Yes. Okay. So answer to first question is blanket covers several properties. Answer to this question is blanket is used for a number of lots in a subdivision. Okay, so everybody's got it right. Now I'm going to tell you why I was puzzled. Now, let's say that you have a guy who is a builder and he's going to build a subdivision. So what he's going to do is he's going to buy some land. He's going to survey it and divide it up into lots. That's why they call it a subdivision, because he's dividing it up into lots. He's going to build a house on each lot. Let's say he's going to build 40 houses. Now, wouldn't it be stupid to get 40 mortgages? That would be really dopey, right? So he's going to get one mortgage, a blanket mortgage, covering all 40 lots. Each time he sells a house, he's going to release it from the mortgage. So I looked at this and I said, well, blanket mortgage is definitely right, but couldn't it also be a release mortgage? Well, duh, there's no such name as a release mortgage. If I went to the bank and I said, hi, Chase, can I please have a release mortgage? They would go, Kristen, there's no such thing. I think you mean a blanket mortgage with release clauses. So, oh, okay.
Oh,
So, I mean, you are going to release each lot from the blanket mortgage. It's just not called a release mortgage. Okay, yes, Sherry.
Hold on, I have to get to my unmute. Question, What did you call it in the very beginning when you make the payment to the bank? The PITI, it includes your principal, your interest, your tax, and your insurance. What did you call that? Did you call that a blanket something?
Called it a budget mortgage.
Budget. Thank you. Budget.
They
Okay,
won't use
thanks.
the word budget on the test, though.
I was just trying to remember what it was. Okay, thanks.
Okay, now the wraparound, I think you're going to find on the test that the wraparound is, I never want to say 100%, okay? But I'm going to say almost always a wrong answer. They love the wraparound as a wrong answer. And I don't know why, but my students find the wraparound to be irresistibly sexy. I don't know why. Everybody loves a freaking wraparound. I hate it, but everybody loves the wraparound. Do people feel clear what a wraparound is, or would you like me to go over it?
Go over it, please.
Okay, I'd be happy to. It's probably best if we review the actual course, because I have a few slides, and most of my students are visual thinkers, so you probably want to have it in front of you. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can see this, the wraparound. Let me find it.
Will it have my favorite number of the chapter number, like 14, and then the sub-chapter numbers?
I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
Whenever I look at any of the lessons, it always says, it'll say, like, I'm going off track a little bit, but mortgages, how to get them, chapter 14.1.E.
Let me tell you why I did that. Because I was, Department of State issues an outline to the teachers.
Mhm.
And I wanted Department of State to see that I was following their outline. So I used the same numbers in my course that Department of State uses in the outline.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen.
Five F.
Okay, here we have the wraparound. Now, in this little story here, I'm the seller. I have a mortgage with the bank at 3.5% interest rate. You come along, you go, Kristen, I want to buy your building. I go, fantastic. You go, but wait a second, I can't get a mortgage, or maybe I won't get a mortgage. There's some reason I'm not getting a bank mortgage. I say, that's fine. I'll give you seller financing. Seller financing means that instead of paying interest and principal to a bank, you pay it to me. And after you pay me the full principal and interest that are due, I will hand over the deed to you. That's seller financing. Now, what makes seller financing different than the wraparound is that in the wraparound, I'm doing seller financing with you, but I'm keeping my mortgage with the bank. So looks to me like I have myself a pretty good little gig going here, because what I'm doing is, because I am such a generous and magnanimous person, I am giving you a fabulous interest rate of 6%, but I'm paying 3.5% to my bank. So that extra 2.5% of interest, that's my profit. So I have a really good gig going here. I'm selling the building to you and I'm making 2.5% every month as my profit. Not bad, huh?
Does the seller have to give that information to the buyer?
Nope.
So he can just say, my interest rate to you for this is 6%, and
Right.
how to get it to you is not your business.
However, people who are good at research might be able to find out, because a mortgage lien is in the public record. So if they were good at research, they could look it up and find out information about my mortgage lien.
But still, they couldn't do anything about it once they've entered into
Right.
the contract of it.
Correct. Can't do anything about it.
And they
Well,
wouldn't have been able to acquire it anyway if they didn't get this. So
I'm the
that's,
seller. I mean, I'll negotiate the 6% with you. I might not go below 5%.
Well, dare I say it, why
It is
bother? Because
negotiable.
they already agreed to it.
I'm sorry?
I said, why bother? Because they already agreed to the original.
Right, right. Okay, so I'm sitting pretty here. There's only one problem. I have probably violated my bank mortgage, and the bank is probably going to foreclose on me. Okay, why? Because banks hate the wraparound. You know why banks hate the wraparound? First of all, the bank is saying, well, if anybody's getting 6% interest, we want it to be us, not Kristen. But the second reason they hate the wraparound is that if you own the building, the bank has no control over you. They can't dictate whether, what if you default and you don't pay? What if you don't buy insurance? What if you destroy the building? I mean, they have no contractual relationship with you. So banks hate the wraparound. So banks usually put a clause into the mortgage contract that prohibits the wraparound.
alienation.
Thank you. The alienation clause.
Give me my money.
Tell you, I'm gonna leave and let Nicole teach. I'm gonna leave. Nicole's
Only
gotta
able
come
to do this
up.
because I could hear you, and then I'm repeating you. Give me my money.
I have had students tell me that they can hear me like echoing after 75 hours of me, they like hear me echoing. Oh dear.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, not 75 hours, 77 hours.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. They changed the law. So 77.
Which brings up another question. If it was 75 at one time and then 77, when's the next increment going to come?
You mean when are they going to increase the length of the course?
Yeah,
Probably not for a while. The last time they increased the length of the course was in 2008. In 2008, it went from 45 hours to 75 hours.
wow.
And then, of course, in this year, it went from 75 hours to 77 hours. But those 2 extra hours were not determined by Department of State. They were determined by New York State Legislature.
That's right, I remember
I
reading.
think just my opinion, but in my experience of having watched Department of State for the last 40 years and how they operate, they tend to be quite conservative and they don't really change things very often. Okay, now, Shanine, do you feel comfortable with the wraparound?
There we go. Yes, I do. Thank you so much.
Okay, now remember, it's probably going to be a wrong answer on the test.
Got it. Thank you.
That's what they usually do. Now, let me give you a couple of more. Let me give you a couple of more of these mortgage questions. All right. By the way, I just want to stop myself. I didn't know how long this class was. And I said to the school, how long is this class? And they said 1 hour. And I said, is it okay if I go overtime? And they said, yeah, you can go overtime. So I'm officially going overtime, but if you are willing to stick with me, I'm here with you. So if people want to go overtime with me, let's do it, okay?
Okay. I have somebody in the other room making dinner, but you know,
Well,
if
if you
I,
have to leave, you have to leave. But
if
I just feel strongly that I want people to get their money's worth and their time's worth.
oh, we're getting more than our money's worth. The minute I saw that I could come to this webinar, I got very happy.
Oh, good, good, good. Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
my question-
our moderator just chimed in and he said, we're doing this every week. This is the first one I've done, but we're doing this every week.
And so if I exit, you know, within the next 5 minutes, say, I'll still be able to see the content of the chats and conversations, right?
Sherry, I would be delighted to talk to you after the session. Don't worry. Okay, now I'm going to give a couple more of the mortgage questions, and then we will move on. And there were questions about deeds and questions about the principal. Let me give you a mortgage question that you're going to see. Which kind of mortgage has higher payments in, I'm sorry, higher monthly payments in later years? Oh, yes, our moderator has told us that we have a Facebook page. So like, if you want to go there and say Kristen's a goddess, like that would be good.
We
Okay.
promise.
Okay. Which kind of mortgage has okay, Nicole's got it going on again. Answer is graduated. Okay, why? Because a graduated mortgage is when you make an agreement with the bank that when you start out the mortgage, your monthly payments would be, let's say, $1,000 a month. Then the next year they're $2,000 a month. Then the next year they're $3,000 a month. And that usually happens in a situation where somebody's income is low, but they're expecting it to go up. For example, if a person is in school, so they don't have very much money, but they're going to go out and practice, like pretend they're going to be an accountant or something. While they're in accounting school, they probably don't have very much money. But when they become an accountant, now they'll have a good income. So they make an arrangement with the bank that for the next year or two, their monthly payments are low, and then their payments graduate to be higher after they get a job. Okay, now I'm going to do, before I go on to the deed questions, I'm going to do the one about the principal, because I agree that that is kind of confusing. Now,
I'm going to excuse myself now.
okay.
And I'm going to see you next week. I look forward to it. Thank you, everybody. This was wonderful.
Nice to see you. I love to see the real people. Okay, thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
So we're going to do the principal. Okay. Now, a principal does stuff for themselves. So I wash my own dishes. I walk my own dog. I write my own tax returns. But I could hire somebody to do that for me. I could hire a housekeeper. I could hire a dog walker. I could hire an accountant. If I hire somebody to do something in my place, they are my agent. Okay. Anybody like to watch Law and Order? Okay, there was a Law and Order case where they had a guy who was not, he was not a police officer or anything like that. He was an ordinary citizen, but he was going to meet with a person who was a suspected criminal. And so they put a wire on him and he went to meet with the suspected criminal. And the judge said, oh, you police officers used a civilian as your agent. In other words, they asked this guy to do police work for them, record a conversation with a criminal for them. So an agent is someone who does something for a criminal. An agent is someone who does something for a principal that the principal would normally do for themselves. So let me type that for you. An agent is someone who does something for a principal that a principal would normally do for themselves. Okay. So when you, I'm going to say, or your broker, because you're going to be a salesperson, right? when your broker signs a representation contract with a seller, landlord, buyer, or tenant, the broker becomes the agent and the principal becomes the client. Oh, Randy forgot his class notes. I better find out his email address and send them to him at the end of the class. Okay, when your broker signs a representation contract with a principal, seller, landlord, buyer, or tenant, the broker becomes the agent and the principal becomes the client. Department of State, and by the way, when I say DOS, D-O-S, Department of State loves to abbreviate their own name. So they call themselves DOS. So DOS uses the words principal and client interchangeable. All right, let's do deeds. Now, you probably recall from the class that in New York State, and I'm specifying New York State because other states have different kinds of deeds than we do, but in New York State, we have 4 basic kinds of deeds. Does anybody remember what they are? Don't worry if you don't remember, I'm typing them for you. Okay, the first one is the full covenant and warranty. Now, Department of State will try to fool you by calling this a warranty deed or a covenant deed. Don't let them fool you. Okay, so full covenant and warranty deed. Now, we know that a covenant is a written promise and a warranty is a guarantee. So they will ask you on the test, which is best deed that gives most protection to buyer? Well, you can tell just by the name, right? Give me the full covenant and warranty. I want the one with all the promises and guarantees in it, right? If I'm the buyer. If I'm the seller, I'm not so wild about all the promises and guarantees that I'm making. But if I'm the buyer, give me the promises and guarantees. I want them. Right? So the answer is clearly the warranty deed or covenant deed. Those will be the choices on the test, because if the choice were full covenant and warranty deed, it would give away the answer. Now, if I'm a seller, I'm going to say to my lawyer, I don't want to make all these promises and guarantees. Are you crazy? So sellers do not like the full covenant and warranty deed. So what sellers usually use in New York City, the more common deed in New York City is bargain and sale deed. It has no warranty, but it does have a couple covenants. Now, the covenants that it has are like pretty freaking obvious covenants. Like the one covenant is the covenant that I promise that I own the place. Like I'm not trying to sell you the Empire State Building, which I don't own. Okay, I'm promising that I actually own the place that I'm selling you. So that's the one covenant. And then the second covenant is that there are no liens or debts on the real estate. Like I've paid off all the mortgages, I've paid off all the property tax, everything. So that's another kind of obvious one, because you definitely do not want to buy real estate that has debts on it. So the second covenant is that I paid off all the debts. So those are the two covenants that you would see in the bargain and sale. Now, the third kind of deed is the quitclaim deed. It's usually only one page. Very simple. And it says, I quit my claim. I do not claim ownership of this real estate. Now, the quit claim is most often used in what? Anybody know?
Divorce.
Divorces and title disputes. Now, we know that title is ownership, right?
Mhm.
So a title dispute is an argument about ownership. Now, I'll give you an example. I had a student who bought an apartment building in Harlem, and she was doing a thorough renovation, like a gut renovation of this building. So she started her renovation, and these two young people, brother and sister, showed up. They were like in their 20s, and they showed up and they said, you don't own this building. You think you own this building, but you don't, because our grandparents owned this building, like back in the 1960s. Our grandparents owned this building, and our grandparents were never legally divorced. They were separated, but they were never legally divorced. So when my grandmother died, the building should have gone to our grandfather, and we should have inherited the building from our grandfather. Therefore, we own the building, not you. Right? So my student is like freaking out, right? So she has a couple of choices of what she can do. She can negotiate with these people. She could reach a financial settlement. She could go to court and litigate with them. Like she has several different options. She could do an arbitration. Lots of choices that she could have. She wound up going to court. Now, one way or another, whether they negotiate, whether they arbitrate, whether they litigate, whatever choice is made, they're going to reach a conclusion. And when they reach a conclusion, the person who does not own the real estate is going to sign a quitclaim deed. And they're going to be giving up their claim. They're going to be saying, I don't claim ownership of this building anymore. And that's exactly what happened. They litigated their case, and the judge found that these two young people, the brother and sister, did not have adequate evidence to claim title. And so my student got to keep the building. But the brother and sister signed a quitclaim deed, like the judge made them sign a quitclaim deed. Now, when there is confusion about ownership, they call it a cloud on title. Because like, oh, it's all misty and I can't see anything. And like, you can't see who the real owner is because it's too cloudy. And so the people are yelling at each other. So it's like, it's cloudy, it's raining, there's a thunderstorm, and the thunder clapping is all the people yelling at each other. So they make it seem like a title dispute is, in legal terms, a title dispute is described like a thunderstorm. So you have the cloud on title. It's like cloudy and raining. You can't see who the owner is. And everybody's yelling at each other. So the litigation to settle a title dispute is called a suit to quiet title, to stop thunder. So the question you're going to see on the test is, which deed could clear a cloud on title and would be used after a suit to quiet title? Which deed could clear? I'm sorry, I meant a cloud on title, not and cloud on title. Sorry about that. Which deed could clear a cloud on title and would be used after a suit to quiet? What's the answer? So we have three choices so far. We've got the full covenant and warranty, we've got the bargain and sale, and we've got the quitclaim. What's the answer? Absolutely right, quitclaim. Okay, and then the fourth kind of deed in New York State, the fourth kind of deed in New York State is a judicial deed, sometimes called a special deed. It is any deed written by a judge. And judges write deeds all the time. Judges write deeds if there's a foreclosure, if there's a bankruptcy, if there's, once again, a title dispute. I mean, judges write deeds for lots of reasons. Divorces, you know, family law. So judges write deeds all the time. Now, I have a student who was very successful. And what he did is he started buying buildings next door to universities. And he would renovate them and change them into apartments for students. And he did it in like every college town, like every place there's a SUNY, this guy would buy a building. So like he bought one in Buffalo, one in Binghamton, one in Albany, and he would buy these apartment buildings near the campus and convert them into student housing. So he called me on the phone one day and he said, Kristen, I want to buy a new building. And not new, but I want to buy a building that's new to me. He said, I want to buy another building. And it has this weird deed that I've never heard of before. And I said, what is it? And he said, it is a referee's deed. So a student asked, what is a referee's deed? And I said, oh, you fell asleep in chapter 3? No, what I really said is I said, oh, it's a foreclosure sale. I said, how did you know? I said, because a referee's deed is a judicial deed. It's a deed written by a judge in a foreclosure. Okay, so a referee's deed is written by a judge in a foreclosure or bankruptcy. It is a kind of judicial deed. You do not have to remember the kinds of judicial deeds. You just have to know those 4 kinds of deed. Now, let me tell you what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that we've gone half an hour overtime, and a lot of people are probably getting tired of me. You're probably getting bored and everything, but let's see if we can do a couple more questions. All right. And I'm going to give you a mortgage question. And you know me, these are real questions that you will see on the school test and the state test. The choices might not be the same, but the questions themselves are things that you will see. So what is the purpose of the secondary mortgage market? And I'm going to give you choices. What is the purpose of the secondary mortgage market? To insure consumer loans, lend money to buyers who want homes, interbank overnight lending, or allow primary lending banks to sell loans to government or investors? The answer is D. That is correct. Everybody's got it right. The answer is D. Answer is primary lending banks can sell mortgages to government or investors. Okay, now, you know, it's funny. What I love about this class is that you just can never predict where it's going to go. And so that makes it really exciting, I think. And I think the best way, like the school said to me, Kristen, what are you going to teach on Wednesday? I go, I don't know. They go, what, you don't know? What, are you crazy? I go, well, what I want to do is address the concerns of the students. And whatever they come up with is what I'm going to talk about. Now, just in case nobody had any questions, I thought, well, I will, I'll prepare, you know, some math to do. And we didn't do any math today. Maybe we'll do math next Wednesday. All right. Now, Nicole has a question here. Does a buyer have to have a buyer's agent in order to make the purchase? In some states, they do, not New York. Not New York. In New York, there is no law that says that anybody has to have a real estate agent if they don't want it. That's an excellent question. So in New York, I can sell my own property if I want to. I can rent my own property if I want to. I can buy my own home if I want to without an agent. I can rent my own home. By the way, the home I live in, I didn't use an agent. So, I mean, I did not act as my own agent. I just acted like a normal consumer and I did not use an agent. So, how many hours do you need to become a broker? Oh, yes, that's because, Eric, they changed the law recently. So what you do is you figure 77 hours for salesperson plus 75 hours for broker course. Okay, and what does that add up to? 7 and 5 is 12, right? So it equals 152, does it not? Boom. That's on the test. It's on the school test and it's on the state test. All right. I'm going to copy the chat. And you can copy the chat. It's probably easiest if you copy the chat and paste it into a document. But if somebody doesn't know how to do that, like Cheryl said that she would feel more comfortable if I sent it to her, and Randy forgot. So I'm going to email it to a couple of people. If there's anybody else who would like me to email the notes to you, please type your email address into the chat right now, and I will do it. Okay. I would be happy to, Jennifer. Just give me your email address. Great. Great. We got it going on. All right. Well, I hope to see a lot of you next Wednesday. I hate to leave you. I hope to see a lot of people next Wednesday, and I hope this was useful to you. And you know that you can, thank you, Nicole. And you know that you can always communicate with me. Sherry, I'm going to ask you to call me on the phone because it's kind of hard to talk over Zoom. All right. So let me give my phone number. I'm going to give my phone number. Oh, thank you, Katrina. Okay, and Sherry, give me a minute because I'm going to take a minute to like copy this whole chat. And then as soon as everybody has had a chance to copy the chat, then you can call me. So call me. It's 7:34 right now. Call me at about like 7:45. Is that good? No, 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 no. No time like the present. We'll talk now.
Do well on your test, everybody.
Yeah.
Mine is tomorrow.
Oh, now you are going to contact me and let me know how it goes, right?
Yes, I will.
Like, you don't have to tell me what the questions are. Just tell me how you felt about it and how you did and everything.
Definitely will.
All right.
Thank you for tonight. I feel better.
Good. Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn off my camera and my microphone, and I'm going to leave the Zoom on for a couple of more minutes to give everybody time to copy the chat. And good luck, everybody. All right. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Shani. I sure will.